This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
On the latest edition of Caught Offside, England crash out of the Euros.
Iceland cometh. But what does this mean for English football?
And Jurgen Klinsmann, England manager?
Surely not.
Check us out on the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into First Take. Molly Karam, Stephen A. Smith, they are out, but instead, I'm going to go with the superfecta.
Oh.
Carrie Chow, joined by ESPNW's trifecta. Kate Fagan.
What's up?
Jane McManus, Sarah Spain. You guys okay with the superfecta? I just want to be
he just invited himself in.
I totally just want to be a part of the crew.
Yeah.
I see squad goals all over the place.
Right.
I'm like, I could be a part of this.
You could be in our squad.
Kate's looking at me like, nah, yo.
It's a trial run. We'll see.
Okay.
Just get a tryout.
That's all I asked for.
Yeah.
That's all I asked for. All right, coming up on the show, we're going to talk about where's Kevin Durant going. In fact, we're going to do a little role play to determine the best scenario for KD. But first, we're talking Lux, Bucks, no whammies, big bucks, no whammies, something like that. The Colts signed their quarterback to the biggest contract in NFL history, $140 million over 6 years, includes a guaranteed $87 million, which is actually $22 million more than the previous high of $65 for both Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. That said, did he leave money on the table? Kate, we'll start with you. What do you make of the deal?
Honestly, I thought the deal was a missed opportunity. And I think it's almost impossible, looking at those numbers, to feel like I believe that that's what I was going to say when I sat down today. But there are rare moments in player, and not just singular player, but players in general, moments in contract history where a single player has the opportunity to set a standard that then elevates the contract level that other guys may get in the future. The one in the NBA, in a lot of ways, was Kevin Garnett when he was with the Timberwolves. He signed that $120+ million 7-year deal that the owners were like, man, is this where we're headed? These long-term guaranteed contract deals. Luck had that kind of place. He had the Colts. He was their QB. He had all of the leverage in this. And so when I say that it was a missed opportunity, I think he could have been the first guy in the NFL to get a fully guaranteed contract. Now think about this number. In the last 3 years, the NFL salary cap percentage has risen 26%. QB salaries have only risen 5.9%.
Including Luck's deal. That is including his deal. So that's not something that's been adjusted or changed much based on this because, again, like you said, he didn't take that much of a leap. The rest of the league is taking that giant jump, and the salary cap is going up by that much, but quarterbacks are not adjusting in accordance. And the reason that most people say is because the leadership position of being an NFL quarterback, the expectation is that you don't put your team at a default by demanding more. So you look at a guy like Darrelle Revis. He is 100% willing to be a paid mercenary. Send me where you will, just give me all of the money. Will that money take away from the team filling all the roster spots around me? I don't care, I'm going to get mine, right? And people it rubs them the wrong way with Revis, but then again, they're like, kind of doing the right thing. Look at him go get his. That doesn't work with quarterbacks. You're expected to be leadered on the field and also off the field, and to be able to say the likelihood of your team succeeding will benefit by you getting your money, but not that much, not pushing the envelope the way that, as you said, Luck absolutely could have. So what we tend to do with contracts is to look at stuff like, look how many records he set, most guaranteed money, most yearly salary, most total money. How could anyone complain about a deal like that? And then you break it down, as Kate did, and you say, he could have gotten more, a lot more. And now there's guys like Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins who are going to come up after this year who were really hoping that he would establish a massive sea change, and he didn't.
Well, if you talk to agents around the league and you say to them, you know, why, out of all the professional sports we have, NFL players who are taking a beating every single week, play intense games, 100% injury rate, why don't they get guaranteed money when you have baseball players and football players who do? And the reason they say is because the agents and the players don't push for them when they have the leverage. So this may have been a case for that. But then, would Andrew Luck be the right guy? Just because look at last year what happened. He played 7 games. He had the lowest completion percentage in the league, 55%, something like that. He's had 12 postseason interceptions, 6 of those against the Patriots, but still, you know, he didn't have a great year last year. And so when you're coming up on your contract year, to have that the year where you have, and you know, obviously not his fault, but a lacerated kidney and some other health issues that keep you out for the rest of the season, does that put him in the best position to be able to bargain a fully guaranteed deal?
He was absolutely in the best position because he was the quarterback of a Colts team that didn't have other options, and coming off of 3 years where his QBR is through the roof and has established himself as one of the premier quarterbacks in the league. And in addition, we're coming off of an offseason where all we did was look at quarterbacks who were unproven, getting all kinds of money, and you thought to yourself, this quarterback who is proven, even if he's coming off of a subpar year, he should be getting, and he should be stretching the market so that, Sarah, as you mentioned, other quarterbacks are like, look, I know I can't get Andrew Luck money, but look, I can come here at this level, and they're still getting more money than they should have, and then they could have gotten. And I think we're talking so much about QBs, but it's not just about QBs. It's not just about pushing the market for like a handful of guys. It's about all NFL players consistently playing by some code and unwritten rule in the NFL because of the nature of their game, which we all get, which is this team first, we're a collective, and that leaves them behind in all of this collective bargaining and pushing forward, which should be probably the one sport with guaranteed money, is pretty much the only sport without guaranteed money.
Well, and you look at the way football works, there are so many more pieces that have to come into play. So you understand in a way the idea that if you're LeBron James, there's not a lot of room around you that needs to be filled in order for your team to be successful. You, as one of 5 starters, can have a tremendous impact on a team. The only position in football that has anywhere near that sort of relevance in football is the quarterback. That's not to say that you don't need good defensive players or other offensive weapons, but the only position that has anywhere near the import of one of the 5 starters in the NBA is a quarterback. And that's why, while you understand their need to make sure that there's enough money to go around to fill a roster, you also understand that they are in a very unique position to say, good luck finding someone else. Because ask any number of teams around the league how difficult it is to build a team without the right quarterback.
Well, all you have to do is look at the top 15 paid players in the NFL, and all but 3 of them are quarterbacks, and the other 3 are defensive tackles.
But the NFL owners could live all day on what we heard as guys retired, which was, we just got another one to replace them. And as you said, we have this belief, and part of it is statistically backed up, that NFL players have smaller influence on a game than an NBA player has. But this rhetoric that constantly goes around, which is, there's just another guy in line to fill your spot. There are certain players where there isn't just another guy in line.
That's that guy with the Cleveland Browns jersey.
Exactly.
It's got the names going down to the floor.
When you have these moments,
shouldn't have been.
When you are one of those guys, and there aren't a dozen others waiting to take your seat in line, well, then you have to capitalize to the absolute maximum degree. And you might think to yourself, this is selfish, but you have to think to yourself, you have to stretch it. Because you have to move the NFL Players Association forward about what they should all expect.
Well, and what Jane said is spot on about it being a tough year for him to do that. In the first 3 years of his contract, it would have been easy to swagger into a room and just be like, hey, what are you going to tell me? Like, I am the future of the league.
Right.
Last year, besides the injury, wasn't playing up to snuff. But he's still, beyond the field stats, exactly the guy you want to put the reins of your franchise in, right? So we're mostly talking about football ability, but if you want to find a guy that you want to put your trust in, brains-wise, football brains-wise, especially a team like the Colts, who are coming off a Peyton Manning era, where the expectation for what the quarterback can do intellectually in order to lead your team is so high that following that up with a guy like Andrew Luck is the best case scenario, assuming that last year was an aberration.
And there aren't enough seats to go around, right, with the quarterbacks. You have more seats than you have really solid quarterbacks to fill them.
By a lot.
I simply look at the New York Jets.
Oh, wow. You're bringing up the Jets.
Well, I know, exactly. Who are like,
Jane, hey, you're not on that beat anymore.
I know, but, it's always it's a great example for so many situations. And they're saying, well, maybe we could go with Geno Smith. Yeah, I mean, really? Okay, but so to Andrew Luck, that's a great problem to have.
Will Luck live up to the precedents that Manning set in Indianapolis?
I mean,
that's a big ask.
He already has proven himself. He already has proven himself as the Colts as a premier quarterback. If you're talking about, is he going to bring 2 titles in the next 2 years
to Indianapolis during his tenure? That's the ultimate question.
That's living up to it. That's the only.
Did he already do that, Kate?
We already look at Sarah jumping in, running anything possible. we talk so much about the only thing is titles, and I get that we need titles because otherwise, it's like, what are we playing the game for? I don't want to be Sarah Spain here on Around the Horn being like, you want to give everybody a cookie? But you can't look at Andrew Luck and say that at this point in his career, he hasn't established himself as capable of it, given that the Colts surround him with the kind of players they surrounded Peyton Manning with.
Right, but at this point, Andrew Luck could continue his downward turn from last season. I don't think that's going to happen, but hypothetically, he could start a downward turn from last season, and what you'd have to go by is 3 spectacular seasons that he progressed in wins and the like how far he took the team, but none of it added up to a championship, and it's 3 years of lost potential if it doesn't keep going up. And so his question is a valid one because the expectations are high in a city like Indy that's coming off Manning.
And it's also about how he comes off of injury. I mean, he had a lacerated kidney, right? Like, this isn't a normal football injury. We've seen quarterbacks who get injured, have a major injury, and they can be a little bit skittish in the pocket coming back out of that. And you just don't know how he's going to respond. So to be able to say, oh, yeah, he's back where he was 2 years ago, and we're expecting him to build off of that, I think you got to see how he takes the field, how he is back there, how comfortable he gets. I mean,
one thing I do like is that the Colts have started to try to shore up the offensive line because to me, one of the most ridiculous things an NFL team can do is spend all of their money on a quarterback and forget any guys to protect him. Right. Just ask the Chicago Bears when they
got to bring up Chicago over.
Right. I always like, you're the Jag. Come on. Oh my God. You guys, we're talking about quarterbacks underperforming or getting stuck with someone that you overpaid. I think this is relevant.
Well, Jets
but
in
they
Chicago.
They spent all their money on Jay Cutler, and then they didn't have anyone on the offensive line. There was that one Giants game. He got sacked 10 times in one game and was hobbled around and couldn't finish seasons. And what are we doing wrong? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. So I like at least that if the Colts are going to spend this money, which could have been even more, they are at least looking to shore up the offensive line.
Well, they got Ryan Kelly in the draft this year. I mean, and that's the problem. Part of the problem with Luck stats last year is he was pressured in 33% of dropbacks. That's a lot, You're not going to have great numbers coming out of that.
You guys brought up both Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins possibly looking at this deal and thinking about themselves, of course, their contracts. Are around the league, are they disappointed at this deal? Are they thinking 100% like, man, we could be making so much more?
I would think that they are, the agents are, the NFL Players Association are. I mean, disappointed is
everyone
such a
but the
loaded.
Owners.
Yeah, the owners, and I'm certain we've talked about Andrew Luck here and shoring up that offensive line. Obviously, taking a little less money if it's going to offensive linemen, and you're coming off a year where you're injured, does make sense. But if you look at it big picture wise, and you go around the NFL, and you're one of those players who's coming up, and you want to be able to say, even if your numbers aren't as great as Luck, if he had pushed it even higher, you're getting more money. I think you're going to see a lot of players disappointed at the amount of money that he left on the table.
Because it's such an easy argument to make, right? You are almost anyone in the league with the exception of like maybe 3 or 4 players, and you go to your front office and you say, I demand this, and they say, oh, that's more than Andrew Luck. Are you kidding? You think you're better than Andrew Luck? Let's just look at the stats. Let's break it. You know what I mean? And it's so easy. It's not fair necessarily, but it's an easy way to get out of having to take that next step up.
But it's not just quarterbacks. I mean, now you have every position. I mean, once you have one fully guaranteed contract, you can be getting $1 million a year and say, look, I want that deal fully guaranteed. But until you have somebody who has that money,
needs to
can't do that.
And this was a perfect opportunity.
Right. So it's not going to, the trickle-down benefits of the guaranteed contract are not going to hit the players who are being signed to 1-year deals, 2-year deals, just UFAs coming out of college. I mean, that would be where the real benefits would end up.
Jane, you mentioned Andrew Luck with the lacerated kidney last season. He's obviously, we know, he's battled through injuries. Well, the NFL has a new plan that may make it even tougher to stay healthy, as a matter of fact. Packers president Mark Murphy says the NFL is debating extending the regular season to 17 games to add international play. The NFL Players Association has been vocal about not extending the regular season. Should the NFL consider lengthening the regular season? Jane.
Before even Jane steps in,
look at this.
I just have to say this because
Have you met Sarah? Have you met her?
I was wait, I'm going to let you talk.
Thanks, Kanye.
Yeah. I just have to say, George Atala, Taylor Swift, and the best, NFLPA Assistant Executive Director of External Affairs this morning, upon reading this statement about the 17 games, the international play, ha 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 ha, with the link, and then he wrote, ooh, I needed a good laugh. Wow. So, Jane, proceed knowing this is how they're reacting to this.
So let's just say it might be tough to get buy-in from the union. We'll start with that. I mean, I always think that lengthening the season is a terrible idea. And I know that people say, oh, we could take, preseason games off and then add them to the regular season, but the starters aren't playing in those preseason games. So doing that isn't going to what we're really looking at is health and safety and benefiting that. That said, I really like the idea of playing internationally. Now, I know that not everybody's crazy about this, but you have the salary cap for the NBA is what, 110 for the team, 110 million, whereas the salary cap for a team in the NFL is 155. And that's considering a 53-person roster versus 14. So the money that they're getting is coming from overseas. The NFL sees this, and of course they want a piece of that money. So fans want it. I have a friend who's in England who wanted to get one of the games in London last year. He dialed into whatever Ticketmaster they use at the first moment he could, and he tries to get one game, can't get it. Next game, can't get it. Got Jacksonville. So I was like, great. So, but that's the level of interest they have, and I think the NFL would be foolish not to capitalize it. Whether 17 games is the way to do it.
Kate,
if there is a way to get international games that will pass through the NFLPA rather than just the ha 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 LOL, I think it could be the best thing for NFL players. Now, I understand all of the health risks about adding a game. Now, I don't know how you do that. Do you then go and subtract a number of preseason games? And I get that the stars aren't necessarily playing in those, but the added upside of value that we have seen historically about expanding your game internationally could be a huge boon for NFL players. I mean, you go back 25, 30 years, just at the start of making NBA players stars overseas internationally, and their endorsement deals in the NBA were so much less. But now that places like Nike know that when they sign LeBron, not only can they sell so many shoes here, but they open up the markets overseas as well. You're talking about endorsement deals that then have leveraged NBA players to allow them to grab back some of the power within the NBA because they are not solely beholden to the money being paid in contracts.
Right.
The NFL players do not have that. And now, so if there's a way that they can garner more international interest, all of their endorsement deals will go up. And when you do that, and when you create international stars like that, that allows them to come back to the NFL and not be completely tied to each contract that they sign for each team, and they can take back some of the power. So I know that's looking a long way down the road, but at some point, the NFL players are going to have to figure out a way that they are okay playing overseas, perhaps a game, because they need to develop the game. That's the last big space for expansion for the NFL. It has absolutely devoured the U.S. market.
But are we talking about just like the superstars in this scenario? Like Tom Brady, the rich are going to keep getting richer because internationally they'll all see, oh, we want Tom Brady. But what about all the other guys? What about all the other players?
Take the NBA model. LeBron James is the one who's getting the huge endorsement deals. And yet LeBron James and his popularity is fueling a rise of salaries for all NBA players. Most NBA players are not being paid millions of dollars because everybody's tuning in to see them. They're being paid to play alongside LeBron James, who they're tuning in for. And the more the NFL can do that, the higher everybody's salaries are going to rise.
Like, that absolutely makes sense for the players, for the league. For fans, I think it's still a toss-up, right? A lot of fans don't want their team going abroad to play, even if it was an added game that they don't necessarily miss out on. And that's been the real sticking point so far. Is there's so few games already. There's only 8 home games. So if you're giving up one of those to another country, that's a really big loss of finances for the team and for the fans themselves who miss out on that one game.
And those games aren't that great when you're watching them on TV.
Well, yeah, exactly.
The quality.
So I understand the fans being like, and then people start floating the idea of the Super Bowl being held in an international. Everyone, what? That's so un-American, right? So I get that, but and your point is right that besides fans maybe not being that down with this, it's great for the players in the league if it expands and globalizes the game. The problem for me is that it's very difficult to reconcile those two sides of we don't want to give up a game with understanding how much we're studying the deleterious effects of the game. If we're focusing on how dangerous and unhealthy this game is, and we're doing our best whitewashing job to make sure no one really looks that closely at how this game is affecting the future health of the players, and the NFL's trying to do all the magic tricks over here to talk about other things so that we don't solely look at this. The only way to do this without making fans angry is to add more games. But you can't do that when everyone's focusing on this. They're already having enough problems with the Thursday games in saying, really, you're mostly focused on our health, and then you're giving us games Thursday, Sunday, Monday. So to me, I think while I understand your argument, and it 100% makes sense for the league and the players, no one yet has been able to float an idea that really allows you to make this decision without saying boldly and without question, we don't care if this is bad for them. Well, we care about the money.
What they have to do, what the NFL has to do, if they really want to do something like this, is they have to make a bold change when it comes to a guaranteed contract, when it comes to upping the salary cap, expanding rosters, when it comes to health and safety and trying to make the game a little bit safer. I know that they are definitely trying to do that. The effect when you have a player like we just spoke about with a lacerated kidney on the field, when you have concussions, when you have players with concussions being sent back into the game, is that it's very, very difficult to imagine a 17 or 18 game series season being any better for these players or being, less damaging. I mean, it's a brutal season as it is. You would have to find a way to try to make it better for the players if you're going to do that. The NFL trying to do this on the cheap isn't going to work. Well, and that's the way they've been trying to do it so far.
The only way that the players will be in on this is, first of all, if they can see the long-term effects, and which the ones playing right now might never feel. Right? So they are probably less willing to devote their bodies to something that's going to pay off for players in another generation that isn't them. But, usually the thing that sways people to do things that aren't good for them is money. Right. So they do have a shot of convincing players to up the number of games in the schedule simply by laying out the same thing that has allowed them to play in the first place, right? The same thing that brings guys to football over and over again on the high school level, on the collegiate level, on the NFL level, despite being told to their faces how terrible it can be for them.
How would the NFLPA feel? Ha 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 ha. if the league came to them and said, you know what, we'll give you neutral arbitration and money. Maybe the 18 games doesn't seem like such a bad idea after that.
In 5 years, 2021. Is this going to happen?
I love all your hypotheticals.
That's what I do. I just throw out random.
Will Andrew Luck be better
Will
than
it happen?
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie.
I'm hot take over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it 2021?
Will what?
Will it be a 17-game season? Will we see an international game written into the regular schedule?
I don't think by then it'll be written in and codified the way we're talking about now, but I do think we will see threefold the amount of international games. I think there will be that progression. But
so you think the league is more likely to have more teams do those one-offs that take away from their home schedule than
I think they have to have a better plan about how they're going to monetize all of it and get buy-in from the players before you're going to codify it
and from
into
the
a
teams,
17.
Right?
Yeah, and the
say
teams.
That we're not going to keep sending you over there, and then other teams don't have the same, what many would consider punishment or, negative toward the flow of their season and their home fans and everything else. How do you do that without having it have to be a requirement of every team?
Right, because right now it's baked into the 16-game schedule, and there's no necessary upside for the players in terms of profits and exposure, only to a small degree right now in playing those games overseas, especially when they're baked in a way that makes them inferior quality-wise. So they're going to have to test it out and find out a way to get those games overseas and get them to be minimal health impact for traveling that far and maximum exposure and profit for the players so that they can then get buy-in for something longer term.
I wouldn't be that surprised if it was in place by 2021.
I think it's going to happen.
The train is rolling, and we've already seen so many kind of big-scale changes in a short amount of time in the last couple years in terms of international play and whatever. I wouldn't be surprised.
They have an office in London. They have deals with stadiums overseas. I think you're not laying that groundwork there if you don't have big plans.
Oh, we just got a tweet from George Atali. He said, "Ladies, LOL."
I think they'd have to make huge concessions, but if they're really devoted to it, the NFL should do it, but they should back it up with the money.
3 candidates right here. The summer of Kevin Durant officially begins today, according to our own Chris Broussard. He'll meet with the Thunder in Oklahoma City. And then according to Bovada, here are the odds for the 6 teams with the best shot of getting Kevin Durant. The Thunder, the odds-on favorite at 1-5. Then the Warriors, 3-1. Knicks, third at 14-1. The Celtics, 14-1 as well. Heat, 20-1. And the Spurs, 20-1. But now we're going to do a little role play to make your pitch for where Kevin Durant should actually go. And Sarah, we're starting with you. You get the home team advantage. You are Oklahoma City. Make your pitch.
Oh, nice to see you, Kevin. But I've been seeing you for years. We're old friends by now. And we don't have to get into the money because, as you know, you can make the most money with us. But it's not just about the money. You've made plenty of money from your shoe deals, and you know that anywhere you go in this league, no matter the size of the market, you can make that cash. More importantly, if you don't leave the Oklahoma City Thunder, if you win here, you are the first person, and you are the face of the franchise and the first guy to bring a title to Oklahoma City for the NBA. You will forever go down as the first guy to do that. Not to mention, we were one game away from the finals last year, and we've only gotten better since. We went out and got Oladipo. Great relationship with Billy Donovan. We took the space that was made by getting rid of Serge Ibaka, and we're going to try and fill that with Al Horford. In fact, that deal may be done by the time we meet. We had the third highest payroll last year, and we've got more money in the bank waiting to pay people. If you stick with Oklahoma City, you get to play with your boy Russ Westbrook, and you both come off the books next year if you do a one-year deal. We can give you even more money to stick around again and celebrate the way LeBron's going to this season, re-signing with the Cavs after they win. That's what you two will be doing next year after you win the title here in Oklahoma City, re-signing with the team you just won a title for as newly minted heroes. There's no rush. 11 of the last 13 MVPs didn't win a title before the age of 27. You are entering your prime. Why is everyone trying to push you into thinking that you need to make a drastic move because you haven't won anything yet? You have accomplished more already than most players at your age. You don't have to run away from the opportunity that you have right in front of you, and no one will ever accuse you of going somewhere else and trying to buy into a team that was created to win. You are creating your own magic here. There is no need to go anywhere else to do that. One more note, Kevin.
Yes.
Since 2012, when we made the brilliant decision of getting rid of James Harden, which many people questioned at the time, which in fact set us up to be in the very position that we're in right now, we made that decision with you in mind, Kevin, with you and Russ, and how we can best capitalize on your talents and get a win. And since that time, and we made that decision in 2012, no team has won more regular season games other than the Spurs than we have, and no team has won more playoff series other than the Heat than we have. We have already established dominance. We are just a few pieces away from winning it all, and it would be a shame for you to leave before that happens.
It's not too shabby.
I'll consider your proposal.
I admire your ability to do just impromptu acting right here.
Well, thank you.
That was like
Sarah's got
Emmy
improv in
worthy.
her past, though.
That was good. I know. So I've got to follow that up, right? And I'm like, let me read from what my notes say.
Well, actually,
already crushing. My pitch already looking very good.
I want Kate, I want you to go first, because San Antonio, they are the, going into this, them and Golden State had a lot of, expectations were high that he might go there. So you're on.
Look, Kevin, I'm sorry we're late. Tim and I, we were working out in Manhattan, so we're still sweaty, but man, we are all about ball, so we had to get that workout in. And I know you're all about ball, and we can let's go outside and shoot. Let's just shoot.
Talk while we're shooting?
Yeah. Let's go play horse.
I don't feel comfortable at the desk
hoop,
anyway.
In the Hamptons, and I know it's sunny out, but the three of us, Pop, Tim, KD, we'll play a little horse, right? Because you are all about ball. There is no place in the NBA that is more about ball than San Antonio. Our guys don't even go out to do international, national commercials because we are all about San Antonio and winning titles, and that stuff takes care of itself, Kevin. And I heard you say how basketball was going to drive this decision. Name one other place where basketball drives everything other than San Antonio. Honestly, Kevin, I wasn't even going to come out here to the Hamptons. The last time I did this whole rigmarole and really lay out the red carpet was for Jason Kidd in 2003. That's when I really went after it, and I did the whole free agent pitch. I'm not going to do that because I don't think you need all of that. I don't think you need all of that hype. I think all you need is for me to say, San Antonio Spurs, NBA titles, 5 years. Yet our last one was 2014. So it's not as if we don't need you. We need you. And we got young guys, too. We got my man Dunk here. He can let you know what it's like to play San Antonio. You can also talk to LaMarcus Aldridge, who just got down here. He can tell you what it's all about. But, KD, you're about the game and you're about the hoop. And Greg Popovich, that's me. I'm all about the hoop.
Putting a lot of responsibility.
That was a lot of energy for Popovich.
I know,
a lot of words. I had to do the best I could.
Wait, let's do the post-game.
That was
What was it like to talk to KD?
Yeah.
That's not a good enough question for me to answer.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Rephrase, come back next time.
All right, let's go to the runner-ups, Golden State Warriors, 3-1 odds. Jane, you are Golden State. Give it to us.
Kevin, I got 2 questions for you. How do you feel about titles and rapidly appreciating real estate values? Because you can get both of those here in the Bay Area. You can come here. You know, it almost seems like we have too much to offer. I'm embarrassed for these other teams, frankly, because, you know, do you think if you'd been on our team, we'd have lost Game 7? Hell no. You would fit right in. We would be winning title after title after title. There would be no other team. Steph Curry right here. Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala. I mean, these guys, it's a dream team. It's a super team, and you would fit right in. And not only that, your quality of life would go through the roof. The quality of the sunsets right here in San Francisco, I hate to tell you, but it just isn't the same in Oklahoma City. The last thing I'm going to say to you, you were drafted initially in Seattle, and we're really just right down the road. So come on back home, KD.
That actually sounded like the kind of pitch that the Warriors would give.
Laid
like
back.
Totally over the top, like we're amazing. The future of the NBA is here.
They would definitely mention sunsets at some point.
Oh, you have to mention the coast. I mean, if you're California, that's what you do. You talk about
and the traffic. You know,
NorCal.
All right, Sarah.
Speaking of coasts, speaking of places that can sell real estate.
You're the Miami Heat.
Right. I am Pat Riley, and I already feel broader of shoulders, slicker of hair, fatter of wallet.
Closer to a fax machine.
Closer to a fax machine, and I'm all swag right now, so just be prepared. Listen, I don't even have to sell you on my ability to take superstars and make a team of them. I don't have to sell you on how I know how to take in a big name free agent acquisition and turn it into titles. Take a look at who you're going to be playing with in Miami. Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, 2 guys that I can assure you know exactly how to complement and support a 1A type player. You are immediately the number 1 option. There is no conversation between am I better than Russ Westbrook, which guy is the real alpha dog on this team. You are the alpha male in Miami. And you have the support of 2 other guys that very easily could be a 1A on another team. But on this team, they are there to support you, and they are there to know how to get you the titles that you're looking for. Not to mention the fact that you are in South Beach, right down the street. You can go to Wet Willie's, get yourself a call a cab frozen drink. Don't do 5 of them. I've done it. It's a bad idea. You might pass out and get a sunburn. Not me, Pat Riley. Pat Riley definitely did that. You're in South Beach. The taxes issue, the money issue, you're taking all that money home. You're not giving it back to the state. You are coming to a place that is a hit maker. And when you come here, you know you are getting a front office who knows how to run things. It was great to get success in Oklahoma City. That's a nice place to get started. It's very quaint. Very quaint. But you want to know where you really get the bills, where people love you, where the adoration of people who understand and know what winning basketball is. That is in Miami. And more importantly than any of that is to consider that we are the only team that you are really, really looking hard at, shade to the Celtics, that is in the Eastern Conference. This is the place where you make your hay, because you don't have to go through the Spurs and the Warriors or the Thunder, your old team, which will be nothing without you, by the way, Kevin. You will be in a weaker conference. LeBron is already aging out. Can that dynamic of the Cleveland Cavaliers that had so much passive aggression, can that happen again? I don't think so. I think that you would be automatically the number 1 team in the East, and you would be taking on a conference where you would be king. I think we're the clear number 1 option.
KD's first reaction, love hanging out with Levitard and Stugotz in Miami.
Of course.
That'd be fun.
Of course, you get to spend so much time with those guys at the Clevelander.
You mentioned I get to play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Can you assure that I will be able to be playing with them?
Well, seeing as we have one of the later meetings in the stretch of meetings with KD, it is possible that by then Hassan Whiteside is no longer on the team, because he said he wanted to have a deal done on July 1st. So that's the problem. Also, it is possible that Chris Bosh never plays again, which is also a problem. But as Pat Riley, I, of course, would not mention
You would have filled all those holes by the time
by the time the meeting happened, I would have, well, we already got a whole bunch of dudes to fill up.
You threw shade to Boston. Kate, you are now Boston. You are the Celtics. Why should KD go to Boston?
Look, KD, we got to keep it real here in Boston. It's cold. It's cold in the winters. You know what can keep you warm, though?
Ballin'.
Championships. That can keep you warm, especially when you come to a franchise that knows a little bit about this. And I know you know this. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Kevin, because you love Larry Bird. He's one of your favorite players. Bill Russell, I know you understand legacy. You're one of those guys in the NBA, I know, KD, who understands where the game came from. You know where it came from in large part? Right here in Boston. You don't want to be that guy who goes to Oklahoma, who goes to Golden State, and all of a sudden the conversation around you is about how you had to chase a title and other people had to get you that title. That's not what would happen here in Boston. You would be able to come back here, resurrect one of the greatest franchises in NBA history with no strings attached about people doubting you. And we've got the pieces to make that happen. We've got the 4th best defense in the NBA, and then you add in the way, man, you were D'ing it up in the conference finals. I know we add you to that. Maybe you bring your boy Al Horford. We've got cap space. We've got assets. We've got draft picks. We've got so much youth. But more than that, we have the banners up here hanging in the arena, and we have a fan base that would make you the face, celebrated for the next generation to say he resurrected the Boston Celtics. And I know that's important to you, KD, so you can deal with the cold winters. Come play in Boston.
Banners aren't blankets, though. It is cold out there.
Is this like a twist on the Kobe, like, you don't keep friends, but you keep championships? Is like a twist on that somehow?
No. Friends go away. Banners last forever.
There you go. So banners can keep you warm.
That's fair. All right.
Banners ain't blankets. That is a great rallying cry for any team that's in a cold weather city that's not going to get the pitch.
Jane, you are actually in a cold city. We're back to New York. You are representing the Knickerbockers.
I am.
How are you going to convince me, KD, to go?
All right. Well,
No. To get a meeting.
Yeah. Don't steal my thunder here. All right? I got this. All right. Hey, KD. Yeah, it's me, your friend, Carmelo Anthony. I got James Dole. No, not yet. Okay, well, we can play some more video games. I'll just, tell you, we got Derrick Rose is going to be here. It's going to be so great. And, maybe Joaquin Noah. Right out of the...
Joaquin Noah.
Joakim Noah.
Wait, was she being...
Can I do that over again?
You're being James Dolan or are you being Mello? I believe that James Dolan might not know how to pronounce Joaquin Noah.
That's true. Anyway, look, they're out at the Hamptons right now. I mean, I've got this really nice new car. I was thinking maybe we could go to the... No, don't want to go to the Hamptons. Oh, take a meeting? Not yet? Okay. So, all right, we'll just stay here and play some video games then. But look, it'd be great to come to New York. So
wait, when does Isaiah Thomas come in? Because I really think that he's the guy to send it home for the Knicks.
No, well, and see, apparently Kevin Durant can't get, or like we can't even get Isaiah in the same ballpark. So
probably best if you're the Knicks to keep him as far away as possible.
Yeah, right.
In this whole role play scenario, I was the Lakers because not invited to the party.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Or you could also be the Clippers because they are invited to the party, but we chose not to represent them. We left them out.
Clip City, Chip City. We want that super team. We don't want Kevin Durant, actually. We're hoping for LeBron after this season.
Oh, okay.
Bring the Banana Boat super team over there. And
talk about some real serious passive-aggressive tweeting. If you get D'Angelo Russell and Swaggy P and LeBron on the same team, there's going to be a no-phones policy.
I'm Ian Fitzsimmons on the latest edition of Football Today. An undrafted free agent just got paid. Our NFL insider Adam Kaplan has the details. And story time on the life and times of Buddy Ryan with a 3-time Super Bowl champion. Subscribe on the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
All right, forget the Banana Boat super team of LeBron James, CP3, D-Wade, and Carmelo, because Carmelo is establishing his own super team in New York. If it was 2010.
That's right.
The Knicks
That's right, man.
have already landed Derrick Rose from Chicago. Now ESPN's Mark Stein and Ian Begley report the Knicks are the strong favorites to land Joakim Noah. Now, in an injury-shortened season, the 31-year-old Noah averaged just 4.3 points in 29 games last year. If Noah ends up going to the Knicks, is Chicago or New York actually better off? Kate, we'll start with you as the Knicks fan.
I am going to suspend all rational thinking at this point.
Just fandom.
I am now going to be
like
12-year-old me
exactly.
wearing a John Starks jersey in 1993. And that's the only way to do this now if you're a Knicks fan. I know there's a lot of Knicks fans out there who agree with me. I don't want to hear rational numbers. I don't want to hear 4.3 points per game for Joakim Noah because what they needed from him wasn't the points per game. It was simply to be the guy who rebounds and defends so Porzingis can continue to grow because he played so well with Lopez on the floor, Porzingis did, that you need a guy like Noah. Look, I know you can tell me that every single decision that the Knicks made over the last 15 years to bring in an aging star, or to bring in Steve Francis, or to bring in Amari Stoudemire, is independent from this particular decision to bring in a now aging star in Derrick Rose. But I can't help but think that luck builds up. And I don't care that that's not true. I don't need any analytics person to tell me it doesn't. If I'm a New Yorker, and I am, I'm going to suspend all that rational thinking, and all I'm going to say to myself is, all right, we got Carmelo Anthony. We got Derrick Rose, we got Joakim Noah, we got Porzingis. We're doing all the things that a team needs to do to be great. And by that I mean we got to get our own draft picks and have them succeed, which the Knicks had not done for a very long time in Porzingis. We're not simply going out onto the market and trying to make this thing work. We are doing all of the steps that a lot of the teams who have won titles over the year have done. I'm not saying this team is winning the title next year. I'm simply saying that.
You heard it here first.
Like when improv and comedy, when people move from the second city to SNL, their game gets upped, okay?
Oh.
Their game gets upped when they go from Chicago to New York. They got to be on that big stage in SNL and in New York City, and all of a sudden, the lights are a little brighter, and all of a sudden, this particular team is going to play a little bit better. I don't want to hear any rational thinking now.
I guess Jane should go next.
Yeah, right. I'll never forget having tickets to the game that the Spurs won the NBA title in Madison Square Garden. It was a dark day.
Are you talking about 99,
yes,
the lockout year?
I was there.
I don't count that lockout shortened year.
I was there, and I was at many other games
is this a rational
too in the 90s.
thought?
I don't know.
And so ever since, and then you have the Dolans as owners. I just can't help but think, as optimistic as I feel right now, that something's going to go horribly wrong and ruin this. This is just the way this franchise is. Everything may look great right now in the offseason. We are a blown knee away, really, from total disaster in this franchise at any given time. And I hope that you're right. That would be great. I would prefer to be wrong and celebrate at the end of the season when the Knicks add another banner to the storied arena.
Okay, whoa.
But
in fact, you're pointing out the disaster the Knicks have been only leads me to further believe that we are due to no longer be a disaster. You pointing out how bad things have been make me think. Now, all of a sudden, Derrick Rose, I believe
Did the Cubs
him.
think that last year, by the way?
I believe
Was that
him.
the Cubs' rationale?
He's been working out hard. We're going to see a Derrick Rose that we haven't seen in the last 3 years. We're going to see a new Derrick Rose who's going to be back at MVP level. He played okay last year.
Put some logical thought in
here for a minute.
Let's have some rationale, please.
First of all, you know how people always argue over whether momentum is a thing or not? Not only is Kate a proponent of momentum, not even in a game, but in life. Not even a game, but in life, it's reverse momentum. Her argument is that the Knicks have failed.
I don't believe in momentum.
The Knicks have failed so many times that means it's all adding up to something good happening. It's like reverse momentum. You have the downward swing so much that suddenly all of a sudden all those bad moves they made mean that you're due.
There's a lot of people out there who use the logic when they play blackjack in Vegas that if you lose a bunch of hands in a row, you should put a lot of money on the next hand.
And they're bankrupt.
Yeah, they're degenerates.
You don't know
their kids aren't going to college anymore. Let me give you some actual
It's better
realistic,
on the roulette table, by the way. Not over blackjack. Just
logical. Okay. I understand that there are parts of this that may be good for the Knicks, right? I don't think inherently getting Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah is a bad thing. I think that there are ways that Joakim can support the development of Porzingis. I think Derrick Rose is going to be incredibly inconsistent and likely a great disappointment, but give it a shot. I'm glad you're optimistic. For me, this is still a better, the Bulls come out better in this, and here's why. Joakim Noah no longer had faith in Gar Forman to lead the team to success. He did not believe that the front office of the Bulls were capable of making the right decisions to lead this team to victory. And he's an aging player who wants to win now. He doesn't have time to be part of a rebuild. And the Bulls are cleaning house to the point where even Jimmy Butler is out there being floated, right? To the point where they are willing to get down to absolutely nothing and see where they go from there using younger guys. Jimmy Butler's still young enough that he's a part of the next step. Joakim Noah is not a part of that next step. He doesn't have time to stick around. So he doesn't want to be here because he doesn't trust Gar Foreman. He has tension with Fred Hoiberg, who sat him on the bench last year and told him he was going to be a big component coming off as the sixth man. He's the heart and soul of this team. He brings all of the energy and fire, and you're relegating him to the bench and his fewest amount of minutes since his rookie season. This is a guy who went from being in the MVP conversation and Defensive Player of the Year to the stats that we heard. 4 points a game, fewer rebounds, and not only that, but if you were in Chicago and you were watching him on a game-by-game basis, after that injury, not the shoulder that took him out, but the previous injury, he looked like he forgot how to basketball. He would, and honestly, what the teams discovered is if that they didn't put him in that position where he was a facilitating center, where he could get at the top of the key and dole out assists. If they just left him up there and knew he wasn't going to shoot because the jump shot was getting worse and worse, he stood there with the ball as if it was a mango. What am I to do with this? It was the weirdest thing to watch somebody who had been a dominant presence on the court turn into someone who looked like he forgot how the game works. And the problem is that he is limited. What he is able to do well still is so limited that teams are able to figure that out. It wasn't going to work for Chicago, a team that needed to get younger and faster and rebuild. It might work for the Knicks. I don't think it will. But either way, I think the Bulls' only option was to allow him to go, and that's part of why Lopez came over in the deal for the Bulls. The Bulls got their center in Robin Lopez.
So you're telling me that Manhattan can be the island of resurrection?
No, that's not what I'm telling you.
That's what you're telling me.
I don't believe that's what
you're telling me. That
illogical Knicks thinking.
Now we've got Derrick Rose.
If you meant island of misfit toys, where one guy has no knees left and the other one is old and forgot how to basketball, and then Carmelo, who apparently can't win with anyone, then yes, that's what I said.
Can you also be misfit toys and resurrection at the same time and resurrect a bunch of careers?
I forgot what happened at the end of that movie. I feel like at the end, the Island of Misfit Toys
I feel like you just proved my point again, was that at least you've got a bunch of guys now who can bond together over the fact that they have been in positions before where franchises have given up on them. I mean, Joakim Noah was in a position where part of the reason why he wasn't playing well was because there wasn't belief in him. Now you're coming to a place where, wow, you've got an entire island that irrationally is going to believe in you. I really have no more irrational arguments to make.
Are we done yet with this utopia where somehow Derrick Rose goes back to MVP form and Joakim Noah isn't an alien?
You know that this is true. Sometimes if you're in a place where people don't want to see you, where you're getting booed, where people don't like you, and you go someplace else, you feel differently. You perform differently.
Right. That would work if the fact that Joakim Noah was beloved in Chicago, and despite his failings and his stats that weren't holding up and his injury issues, the city loved him. So he's going from a place that loved him despite his flaws to New York.
His hometown.
It's a big stage. New York is really known for being nice to people no matter how they perform. I'm sure they're going to say, we remember when you were here, when you were born 20 plus years ago, and we're going to focus on that instead of how you're not doing what we hoped when we signed you.
New Yorkers can be kind. That is true. I'm going to leave it with this final analogy.
More irrational thoughts. When did you jump on this?
No, trust me, I'm not. But my final analogy is the Knicks, and apologize to potential sponsors here, but the Knicks are like Marshalls, Ross, the Burlington Coat Factory. These players had their great run. Now they're on the discount shelves for a reason.
Yeah. So that they can clear a bunch of cap space and bring in a couple guys who are still on the upswing, and they can be the pieces around them.
All right, AP Player of the Year Denzel Valentine told The Undefeated that he thinks staying 4 years in college caused him to drop to the 14th pick in what many consider a very weak draft. Here's what he said. Seniors are viewed like they've reached their potential. They can't do this, but then they will say, this freshman has so much potential. What you're telling me is he didn't prove anything to you, but this senior has proved everything to you, and you say, oh, he's reached his potential. Seniors are definitely treated unfairly. Jane, we'll start with you. Do you agree with Denzel's statement?
I do. I think I've seen it a lot. There's no exact science when it comes to actually drafting a player. There's none. I mean, you can really look at stats, and I think a lot of it comes down to size, and if someone shows the build that they think is needed for a particular position, that plays a lot into it. Speed is something. I've seen this on the NFL side all the time. And the first year that I covered the Jets, thank you very much, they drafted
We forgot our bingo board today, but I think we filled it today already.
But they drafted Vernon Golston in the first round, and Gerard Mayo was another player who was in that draft. So and I think went below Vernon Golston. And Vernon Golston was a bust. He never had a sack in all of the years that he played in the NFL. And you know, this to me is classic example of kind of overthinking things. And I think he's right. If you have too much information on one player and not enough on the other, you're going to fill in the blanks with positive attributes and potential. And I think that does weigh in the minds of people who are, of scouts and of general managers when they're coming in and they're making these decisions. And it does go against players who've decided to spend their entire, putting visible stuff on the table, the good stuff and the bad stuff, during their years in college.
Spain, seniors treated unfairly?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have watched a lot of sports talk, so I know how this works. You're supposed to compare things to people that you're dating, right? That's how it always goes. So this is what I'm going to say about Denzel Valentine. This is like when you meet someone and you're like 3 dates in and you have a very limited set of knowledge about them. So everything you don't know gets filled in with the greatest possible attributes you could give to them, right? So you've got these rookies that are coming out and you're telling yourself, I don't know much about his family. I bet he has a great home life. I don't know much about, his financial situation, but he's got a great job and he's stacked with money. Don't know much about how he treats a lady, but I think I'm just going to find out with each passing day that the chivalry is not dead. And then you get a guy that you've started dating for a bit longer, and all of those holes start to get filled in, and it turns out he keeps a toenail collection of, clippings by his bedside. Wow. And he only showers once a week, and he's cheated on every girlfriend he's ever dated, right? And that information that you have now tells you what you need to know.
But you're saying that's a bad thing, right?
What I'm saying,
what's wrong with that?
What I'm saying in the dating situation is that when it plays out, you get all the information you need. But people are so willing in the early stages, despite knowing that eventually when you flesh out all the information you didn't have, it usually doesn't end up being everything you hoped for. People still go into every dating situation and fill in all those blanks with the best they can think of. That's what every NBA team does with a freshman. They say, we don't know enough, so we're going to assume that all the things we don't know are going to play out to the advantage that we want. Look at something specifically that Valentine spoke about, which was the conversation around his knees, right? Because of his length of time playing and the conversations they had about his health, he only missed 4 games, right? So, and yet he's still entering where they're considering him an older player, a flawed player who might possibly be coming in with some physical constraints, despite only missing 4 games. And then you've got guys that mainly people drafted by the Sixers that are younger, don't even end up getting to play a single NBA game before sitting out years of time because of physical issues that they didn't know existed. Whereas you've got a guy who's proven over 4 years of a very high-level competition that he can stay healthy and only miss 4 games. Take into account that Draymond Green is a guy who is supporting Valentine's argument. He's a second-round, 35 overall pick who's now an Olympian and All-NBA and one of the best players in the league who had the same exact issue where people wanted to fill in the blanks on someone they didn't know as much about instead of taking a chance on a guy that they had a pretty well-rounded appreciation of and who would only get better once he entered the league.
So I think Denzel actually is the anomaly here because he could have been drafted earlier. And he chose to stay in school a lot of ways, perhaps because he wanted to up his draft stock. But he proves the point that I disagree fundamentally with what he's saying by parsing it in this way. He seems to be implying that staying in school hurts your draft stock. Really, what's going on here is that being a player who needs to stay in school hurts your draft stock, which is that the players who go back to school, it's because something is missing from their game. It's because something that they already do has not been cultivated enough. And now when you stay in school all 4 years, of course we have examples like Draymond Green, who's drafted in the 2nd round and then comes out and he far exceeds expectations. And it may be the same for Denzel Valentine. It may be the same, but at the same time, the very fact that these guys have to go back to school and stay in systems as opposed to playing professionally and learning the NBA system or even going overseas and playing pro ball over there, the fact that they're in a coaching demanded system where it's less about developing NBA guys and it's more about playing in a system that a college coach has developed in order to win means that you're not developing at the same pace as you would if you went after your freshman year or your sophomore year. And it actually means that if you're going back to school, it's because there's a reason you had to go back to school. And you guys touched on it, the fundamental human need for, I've given you mystery door, and there's something behind mystery door 1, or here is this solid player who will average you 9 points a game and you can draft him at the end of the 1st round. Or mystery door number 1, which could be anyone from Kevin Garnett to second-round draft pick who's going to be in the D League 2 years from now. You don't know.
I will say this much, though, about Valentine and the fact that he went pretty high to the Bulls and that they did decide to go for a guy who's old by NBA draft standards. Look at a lot of the other trends that started to show up this year and in a couple years previous to this. Teams going out and getting foreign-born players who have been playing in pro systems abroad and who are older and more developed and saying, you know what, we would rather take that. This year's draft, first round, had more international-born players than any draft in the history of the league because they're looking at those freshmen, those one and done that you may view them and say they don't need to stay in school, they're ready. But you know what, the teams are looking at them and saying, absolutely not. We don't think they're ready. And I would argue that the one and done system in a lot of ways is forcing guys into the position of saying, I need to declare now because otherwise it will look like I'm not ready. I want to make my money now. I want to get into the league now. I want to do what you said, which is I want to be developed on a professional level. And a lot of them are not ready. And we are seeing a lot of teams pay tremendous amounts of money and investment. Money not so much because the rookie salaries are capped, but investment, the choices that they make to build a team around somebody who they know very little about. And again, with the Sixers, sometimes won't even end up playing or won't end up panning out or they'll be traded away before they do anything for the team. So while I understand your point, there is some pushback in that a lot of those players that are deciding that they are ready and are entering the league either are not ready, and that is being clearly proven on the court, or something that we've talked about on our Trifecta radio show, they go undrafted. And then now they're stuck in this limbo where they thought that they were ready. They thought the teams would want them. Teams go out and get a bunch of international players instead to fill up the spaces. And now they're left. They can't go back to school because of NCAA rules. And they have to either go D-League or play international and try to find a way to make that gap up when they've gone out too early.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is that you have a player like Valentine who decides to stay in school another year for whatever reason, because in part, if he comes in and says, I want an agent and I want to go in for the draft, that's it. That's a high risk choice in some ways if you don't think you're going to be one of the top players. Do you really want to make that leap if you don't know that it's going to pay off for you? And I think once you're in the second
round and then the guaranteed money loss and the difference in the drop off between being one of the top guys and going later in the draft is gigantic.
I think we're talking about guys who are 1 year and done and have potential and do get drafted. Of course that nobody's talking about the guys who then go in for the draft and then don't get drafted and then have to be exiled and fight their way back in. We're talking simply here about the NBA propensity for wanting to draft a guy whose skills are still malleable, perhaps, as opposed to looking at college seniors and you're saying to yourself, they already have solidified what their skill base is.
Which I think is ridiculous, and that's the point. And I think that's why he's right, because you're looking at a player who's only been in a system that's a college-based system, and you're looking at them as if they're past their prime or they're already too old to be molded, when instead you're probably getting someone who's got an incredibly well-established skill set, who knows how to play under a coach, who knows how to work with. You're not getting a guy who's still essentially a child.
Those are few. This is why I was saying Denzel proves the point, because they're the anomalies where guys did go back and they're still solid NBA players. We don't know yet about Draymond Green, and then they give you more because of it. But that's the anomaly. More often, the very fact that you have to go back to school is because you're not ready. So it's not like the NBA talent scouts are looking at the NBA draft differently and going back and saying, well, we just love guys who are one and done, and we're going to look at guys who are 4 years.
I think that's the point.
It's a confirmation.
But the self-evaluation of being Denzel Valentine and saying to yourself, I would prefer to improve my skill set and I'm going to go back to school and get better, versus a guy who says, I want to go right now and make the money, even if I'm not ready, even if there are holes. And you might consider it a flaw or a proof that they are a lesser player that they went back, when in the end it might be beneficial to them, and it might be beneficial to the team that gets a player they know more about, instead of investing their team's future with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pick in a guy that very clearly doesn't pan out.
And those guys end up being busts, some of them. I mean, you're acting like them.
There's only been 4 seniors drafted in 5 years. So a lot of guys end up being busts. What I'm saying is, from an NBA perspective, if you can tell me I can draft a guy and I am going to coach him.
Which is Valentine's point. Not that they're being blinded by the limited amount of information they're having, and they're filling it in with, well, once he gets to us, he's going to be great.
That's what I'm saying. Valentine is the anomaly. Because most guys who do go back, it's because their skills are inferior and because they need to develop something. It's not just because we automatically look at seniors and think, okay, well, they're not as good basketball players. It's confirmed in the numbers and the stats that they are not as talent rich if you go back and play 4 years.
We're talking soccer. Don't change the channel. Only a couple
and
days.
we're women. Don't change the channel.
Only a couple days removed from England's devastating loss to Iceland and the resignation of their manager, a familiar name is being mentioned as a possible replacement. Current U.S. men's manager, Jurgen Klinsmann. Now, many Brit fans are pushing for Klinsmann in England, even though the U.S. lost 4-0, or 4-0, as they say in soccer, in the semifinals of Copa America to Argentina, the number 1 team in the world. They didn't even get a shot on goal in that game. So, Kate, we're going to start with you. Why isn't USA men's soccer better?
You got to follow the money here in a lot of ways. And by that, I mean the cost of becoming good at soccer in this country is astronomical compared to the cost of becoming good at soccer in other countries. Like all around the world, soccer is a street sport. You can walk out your door and find kids playing 3-on-3 in the street where you can learn the type of fundamentals and skills and innate knowledge of soccer that we often do with basketball here. Because here in the States, basketball is more of the street sport where you can go out to your playground and you can learn the skills that become in your DNA that lead to the kind of creative, interesting, sophisticated play that we see out of our NBA players and why we have the best basketball players in the world. But here in the U.S., when soccer, you can't walk out your door and go find a 3-on-3 street game, let alone an 11-11 game somewhere in your playground. So when you don't have that ability to do that, which is cost-free, you end up having to create structured environments where you can go play soccer, which costs tons of money. And then you have to pay fees, coaching fees. And it becomes an elitist sport in the U.S. like it is nowhere else. Keep that in mind. This is a sport almost everywhere else in the world where you don't have to have riches and money to be able to play. But here in the U.S., you better have a lot of money in your pocket, and it becomes a pay-for-play system. And it's why when we watch games like U.S. losing to Argentina 4-0 and then losing 1-0 to Colombia in the third-place game, it's why our guys are not competing at the world-class level. We certainly have had great moments, but when you look at it all-encompassing, we have not had the kind of elite world-class team that truly, when we step on the field against a Germany or an Argentina or a Spain, consistently competes. So you can point out 2009 and we beat Spain, or when we beat Brazil. Those are the moments where we have played well. But if you look across the years, we are a second-tier team, and a lot of that is because of our pay-for-play model.
I think there are some other things at play here also. One of them is the fact that you just don't see soccer, men's soccer particularly, on TV in the same way that you see other sports, right? So kids want to grow up and emulate the people they see on TV. And that's going to be NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball in this country for the most part. It just is. Also, Americans, we really love to be immediately excellent whenever we compete with other nations. We just do. And the other nations, in this case in soccer, have also put the same resources and want just as much. That's difficult for us because now you're talking about the best in the world, not just the best in our own little fiefdom. I think I compare it to men's tennis, where we've been really good at times, but we don't have the infrastructure and the programs in place that are being able to produce men's tennis players. And men's tennis training and participation worldwide is up and strong. And that is very difficult for us to compete against.
I think there's a lot of factors at play here. I think obviously there is the level of elitism that is required. But there are other sports in our country, like hockey, that costs a ton of money, that manages to still be a world power. U.S. is always in the gold medal game, right? And that's partly because other countries can't afford to compete at an elitist level with a sport like that.
Playing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you bring in Jane's aspect. So not only is it super expensive to play here, but if you are watching the way the market works, you look at the people who are making the most money playing and who are finding the most fame and success, and those are NBA, NFL, MLB. So the best athletes are going into those sports. So now you've taken what is a tremendously large pool of athletes in America when compared to smaller countries that consistently beat America. There's more athletes to choose from, high-level athletes. A lot of them go off and play other sports. So now you're left with a diluted pool. Once you get to that diluted pool of athletes who decide to specialize in soccer despite the fact that they can make money elsewhere, now they have to be financially capable of competing in it. Then you add in the fact that it's not right now financially beneficial to most youth clubs in the U.S. to try to prop up a single or several like really elite players. Right now, the way things work in the U.S. is that those youth clubs, their end goal is to create a successful team and to work towards copycatting what they see in other countries, the format that they're using, the style of play that they're using, the soccer academies that they create, the number of coaches that they get qualified. They copycat different strategies from different places, but what they don't do is allow for the fact that a youth club can make a ton of money off of one single player who gets really good. And then they get fees going back and forth to allow them to go play in other leagues in other countries where there is a ton of money. Instead, our focus is on creating a good squad. That's great, but what will end up benefiting on the whole more is to find those individual great players who then financially support the clubs, who then allow for more scholarships for players that can't afford to play because it's too elite for them, and then it builds. So it becomes a whole process. So part of it is just that the tax that they're using aren't appropriate.
The diluted player argument feels like it's one that we've heard before, and sometimes I reject it because when you look back over the last few years about which soccer players are the most transcendent on this planet, if you leave aside Ronaldo because he has a bigger build, and you could argue that he could have been a basketball player, but then you look at Messi, or then you look at Zidane, or you look at some of the Spanish players, we're talking about like 5'7", 5'10" guys. So I'm saying, no, my point is only that even in a diluted pool of U.S. athletes, 315 million people, even if we diluted it because we have football and we have basketball, we should still be able to take the leftover couple thousand guys who have risen to some sort of elite level and hone them into a world-class level.
Your argument then is that soccer, perhaps comparatively to other sports, is more about training someone into greatness versus a natural ability combined? Because for me, when I say the best players aren't, I'm not saying, oh, imagine if LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Cam Newton, that's not what I'm saying. It's not about physical stature. It's not about overpowering, outrunning, all that stuff. It's about players that are uniquely equipped to dominate a soccer game. And we don't find them if they're doing other things. We don't even know that they could be that great player who could be honed into an elite, like European, international level player. It's not about just the dominant build. It's about, do we ever even see them participating? Because as you know, we're all athletes. Like, you can look at someone and say, I would have absolutely pitted that person, Cam Newton, let's say, as an NBA player. But he never picked up a football, and so then he went and played basketball. I could have looked at this. I could have looked at Steve Nash and said, Steve Nash, you're a soccer player. You're not a point guard, right? You look at all those things. We don't ever see them. They are not put in a position to figure out whether they have whatever it is, that magic in them that when pinned with the right skill set and the right training becomes a soccer star.
Right. My point was only that to get to a next generation, which can then inspire and have a soccer ball be the first thing you pick up in America, you're going to have to take a diluted pool of talent and have the coaching to have them inspire a generation. And we can't just assume that we're going to get better athletes. We have to figure out a way where the athletes who do go to soccer get the quality of coaching that can then allow them to compete on a world-class level so that soccer does become more ingrained in society.
Hey fans, it's LaChina Robinson, your host of ESPNW's Around the Rim, and this week's podcast is dedicated to the life and legacy of Pat Summitt. Go to the ESPN app, download us under the Listen tab as we celebrate the life of a great pioneer.
Johnny Manziel says he's going to be completely sober by July 1st. That's what he told TMZ, and a source close to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler says he's actually quite serious about that pledge. Manziel hoped to play in the NFL this coming season, but admits 2017 actually might be a little more realistic. Is it the same song and dance? Do you believe him about his plans to be sober starting on Friday? Sarah, we'll start with you.
All right, well, I first heard this and I thought, I'm glad that we're hearing from him and he's speaking out and saying, I'm going to make a change, right? That's the biggest thing. But logistically, this makes zero sense to me, and here's why. Not only because I think it's very difficult to go from, well, I'm in Cabo and I'm
Instagramming a lot
drinking and showing my partying, but by Friday I'm going to be done. It's sort of like saying I'm going to go on a diet, but first I'm going to just plow through like 3 pizzas. I just want to get it out of my system, right? That's a very difficult way. I've never tried to, to go sober or whatever, but that seems like a very difficult way to do it, is to say I'm going to be in the middle of Cabo and all of a sudden I'm just going to snap my fingers and be done. Secondly, not to take this lightly, but this is the first thing I thought of, and maybe this is because I'm still a young person who likes to go out.
Immature is what we're
yeah. But I'm thinking to myself, hold up. Friday is July 1st. You know what's Monday, just a couple days later? July 4th. Who gets sober right before July 4th, presumably when he'll still be in Cabo? Who goes to Cabo and then midway through their party vacation switches from party vacation to some sort of sobriety?
It's the ultimate test.
No, it's a terrible idea is what it is. Like, to me, it's like when people say, okay, starting January 1, I'm going on my diet. I've been talking about this for months, but I'm starting January 1. Forgetting the fact that most people, or many people, not most, many people, on New Year's Eve go out and get pretty sloshed, and then January 1st is all about hamburgers and greasy food. You're not going to start a diet on January 1st. Don't be kidding yourself. January 2nd, maybe. So, like, to me, beyond the fact that, like, why would we suddenly believe him now? It's also just logistically, it makes zero sense that you would start your sobriety in Cabo at a party house with a bunch of friends where you've only been for 1 day and there's already reports on TMZ that you're hanging out with people that have bags of cocaine, and 4th of July weekend. Like, wouldn't you be home? Wouldn't you be surrounded by anyone that can be supportive? And wouldn't you not do it before one of the biggest party days of the year? That's just me.
Well, first of all, I feel like I learned a lot about you just in the
You already knew.
That was quite a
You already knew. You already knew, Jane.
I did.
Everything in moderation, Jane.
Well, for some people, everything in moderation, and then there are other people who can't do certain things. And from everything we've heard about Johnny Manziel and we've seen in the last year, it seems like he may be a person who just can't do certain things that other people take for granted and don't have an issue with. So I was glad to see that he realizes that he needs to give the sobriety thing another chance. And he's somebody who spent part of the last off season in rehab for an undisclosed reason at that time, but we've certainly heard his father come out and say that he's concerned about what's going to be happening in the future and for Johnny's life. And for a parent to come out and say that publicly, especially when your child is such a public figure, really says a lot. So, I've talked to addiction experts, none who are treating Manziel in particular, of course, but going into rehab or stopping is a very serious thing. It takes support. It would probably need to go into another facility of some sort. I doubt that this is the kind of thing.
Not at a mansion in Cabo surrounded by other people drinking.
Exactly right. So there's a seriousness. It's not like a light switch that you can turn on and off. A lot of people try to stop and then they keep going, and then they stop again.
And he's already been to rehab. We know at least once.
Exactly. So for me to be able to say, I'm going to stop and never do it again on starting July 1st really is unrealistic when it comes to the process of getting sober and the process of stopping some of these very destructive habits and things that have gotten him in trouble with the law. I mean, he still has a trial date or court date coming up on this domestic violence charge, and that's a very serious thing. He's looking at some very serious repercussions.
Yeah, what concerns me about buying into this being a turning point is that nothing has happened. There's no catalyst that shows me why this should be a turning point, other than to just believe in the fact that Johnny Manziel has the power to say tomorrow's the day, which I think historically over humankind's existence has often, when it comes to these things, not been powerful enough of a way to change if that's not also equipped with, Jane, as you mentioned, a kind of structure in place that then allows somebody to move forward with this newfound belief that that's who they should be. And when you look at Johnny Manziel over the last 18 months, there have been moments where I think we thought that was a catalyst, or maybe it was rock bottom.
We assumed.
Because we were looking at it through our lens as like, what would motivate us to know that a change was necessary? And I don't know that we can apply that same logic to Johnny Manziel, because historically, every moment that I think a lot of us and sports fans have felt, that would be the moment where I would realize I had lost so much that it wasn't worth what I was engaging in to continue to behave that way.
Right, but
none of that logic has ever applied, and so it's hard for me to look at this. And even though we all love comeback stories when they feel like they're fueled by passion and compassion and remorse, we all, like, you can look back in sports and we would all believe in those. I mean, even Ray Rice, we would say,
there is enough there that a second chance is deserved. At some point, perhaps we will feel that way about Johnny, but to this point, nothing has been offered that suggests to me that a change is coming.
Right, and your point is great, is specifically thinking about a moment during the season when he gets named the starter, they go to a bye week, and they say, all you got to do is just don't mess up for a week, and you're starting an NFL game. You're in a position to take over this team. We're handing it to you. And he cannot stay out of trouble for 1 week. He goes straight to Vegas. And not only is he getting in trouble, but he's on camera, looking at the camera, engaging in with knowing that that's going to get out. And because of what you said, the mindset is not one of us thinking to ourselves, what are the benefits and costs of this? What am I putting on the line here? It's 100% stuck in that cycle of I need this, I need this. I'm not looking or thinking about what the cost might be.
Well, I think we have a real catalyst coming up here. And we got a hint about it last week with Bob Hinton, who said, in a text that he sent to the AP that he thought wasn't going to go to the AP, said, I hope that part of the requirement of this plea isn't that he has to quit drinking.
Pee in a cup.
Pee in a cup, exactly. So I think what we're seeing is that the repercussions for Manziel coming up could be the loss of his freedom, potentially, if he doesn't start doing something to get this all under control. Right. And that would be...
You'd assume that a domestic violence trial and the possibility of your sobriety or your, being on drugs would be tested would be a wake-up call. And maybe it is.
Maybe it is. Or maybe it's not. We'll see if he could actually follow through with it.
Well, after talk of a possible calendar Grand Slam last year, Serena Williams hasn't won a Grand Slam tournament since Wimbledon. In London, she takes her fourth shot at tying Steffi Graf for most majors in the Open era with 22. Williams lost in the semifinals at the U.S. Open, the final of the Australian Open, and the finals of the French Open. Jane, we're going to start with you. How important is it for Serena to win Wimbledon?
I think it's incredibly important because she is playing for history right now. And that's great that she was in the final in Australia and that she was in the final again at the French Open where she lost to Garbine Muguruza. But now it is time for her to start winning again. She has only so much runway left at the peak, although we keep saying that about Serena and she keeps proving us wrong. So maybe I'm a little bit premature here. But at the same time, you have a woman who's in her mid-30s who is breaking records at a time when they just hadn't been broken for. She has 21 Grand Slam single titles. The record holder in the Open era is Steffi Graf. It's number 22. And we want to see, I think Americans and fans want to see that if she's going to break that record, she does it. This is the time, and the grass is her surface. She's won 6 of her Grand Slams already on the grass. So come on, Serena. Now's the time.
Put it together, Serena.
It's like if you rewind about a year ago, it seemed like she could stroll her way to passing Steffi Graf. You mentioned a runway. Like visually, it just felt like she can take her time. If she plays in 8 more majors, she's probably going to win 6 of them. Not only is she going to pass Steffi Graf, she could pass Margaret Court of 24. That it's not just the Open era and become the all-time winningest singles title winner in history. That stroll now feels like a sprint. Or she can still stroll, but the runway is like non-existent. Because we haven't seen her win. If she doesn't win now in Wimbledon, it will have been going into the U.S. Open and be a year anniversary, which shouldn't matter. But when you look back at what we were seeing from her and the pace at which she was adding these titles does raise a red flag. And the red flag is not about, is Serena amazing and is it great? It's simply about, will she retire as the all-time winningest women's tennis player? And I'm assuming that's something that matters to her. And it feels like it's every passing major becoming more and more in danger when it was just a sure thing 1 year ago.
Yeah, totally right. When we were watching Serena heading into Wimbledon last year, in fact, when she won Wimbledon, she was leaving the All England Club with the 4 major titles in hand, right?
Serena Slam.
Right. She failed to get the final one. She came up short, but she had put together an incredible year, one that people had said would not be possible at her age, right? So you're right. We thought, wow, she couldn't get the big thing. She couldn't get it, but we still were admiring everything she accomplished, and we were certain that this year would be a follow-up, or at least, even if you only do half of what she did last year, you're passing Steffi Graf, and you're putting together an incredible mark for this age and for her career. Instead, she enters Wimbledon with nothing, right? And if she leaves Wimbledon with nothing, now we're really wondering, Is the window passed? And I know you said we keep doing that to her, and it's not really fair because she's already exceeded expectations over and over. You know, and a lot of athletes talk about this. Actually, Abby Wambach has a new podcast on ESPN, and she did her very first topic was talking to Kobe Bryant, talking to Lindsey Vonn about when you get to a certain age, every conversation involves somebody trying to push you out the door, right? And we've been trying to do that with Serena Williams for years now, and she keeps saying, I'm not ready to go. But this game is about winning, and it's about winning majors. When you are coming up, every one of those tournaments that you get supports your game and makes you feel like you're on the right track. At this point with Serena, it's majors or bust, and Wimbledon is an important one now because time's running out this season.
Well, I think we see with Venus Williams, or her older sister, who's still playing, although on court 18 for her first match at Wimbledon, which is crazy considering how much winning and how often she's been a champion there. There are some people who are kind of like looking at that like, hey, a little bit more respect for Venus Williams, please. But I think when we look at Venus, we see it's perfectly okay to continue playing for as long as you like, whether or not you're winning every major, as long as you're enjoying it and you're doing reasonably well. There's no reason for her to stop playing. Yet with Serena, we really expect more. And she's reaching the finals. And it's kind of like, oh, you're working so hard in Australia to get all the way to the final against Angelique Kerber. You're working so hard at the French Open, not your favorite surface, to get all the way to the final against Muguruza. To not walk away and to capitalize on that it's a real loss now, as opposed to being able to say in her younger days, I made it to the final of the French Open.
Mentally, where is she? I mean, it's weird to say this about Serena because she does have 21 titles, but as you mentioned, she's in the finals now, and she keeps falling just short. Mentally, now at her age, where is she?
I would think that would dovetail with how she feels physically. If she's getting to the final and she still feels physically okay, so be it. She can continue to do that. If she's getting to the finals and something is wonky with her, or if her leg or something is bothering her, then it might start to get into her head. Is this injury, is this thing I'm feeling something that's going to start holding me back and keep me from my ultimate goal?
And I think an interesting element that you added too was the fan side. You know, you set up all the professional stuff and then you said everybody in America wants this. And it's true, and there is an added pressure, not just of what she's already established, but let me hit that mark, that number, because a lot of people would argue already that she's the greatest of all time, you know, regardless of whether the numbers say that. She wants the numbers to say that, and America wants to be able to say the greatest ever as an American player, and for America to still be on top in a sport where we've been hard-pressed to find people to root for that are having much success in the game on both sides.
Cleveland no more. Cleveland's popping. Indians won their 12th straight game Wednesday. Tonight they look to tie their franchise record for most consecutive wins when they take on the Blue Jays. And according to Baseball Prospectus, the Indians are now the favorites to win the championship. The winning streak, yeah.
Where are you reading that?
Baseball Prospectus.
No, baseball.
Favorites to win the championship.
Well,
Cleveland's all about winning these days.
The numbers I saw in Baseball Prospectus were still that the Cubs had the highest odds of making the postseason and had the better odds. But okay,
so you're going to believe that no matter what?
I'm just saying.
Not after 12 straight wins.
Let me get back to the point. Yes, you're right. 12 straight wins, longest win streak in the MLB this season, one away from their franchise record. Their numbers during that 12-game win streak are dominant. 4 straight series sweeps. And it started right around the same time that the Cavs changed the tide in the NBA Finals. So this is a city that's like love and life right now. I'm excited for all of my family members in Cleveland. My only thought is it weird to live in a world where all the narratives that we've been used to for 50-plus years are changing, right? The Yankees are bad and Cleveland is good? What's going on?
It's a little disconcerting.
Right?
And you know what's going to be really weird? If the Browns are good, then in the fall, I think that's going to be that's when people might be going, okay.
Dogs and cats living together.
Yeah. And housing prices start going up in Cleveland. And it's like, I'd really like to move there, but I can't find a house. Everything's like $8,000 a month. So I don't know what's going to happen, but Cleveland, enjoy your time.
You love
Bill
it?
Barnwell did a sports misery index after the Cavaliers won, highlighting which city now embraces the mantle of the most sports misery city in the country.
I know this.
San Diego.
San Diego.
America's finest city.
Do I think that San Diego?
Yeah,
I think they're okay, whereas Cleveland, like, genuinely, this gives them something.
That's why we're going to Buffalo next instead of San Diego in the misery index.
I don't think we have to be too worried about the Browns doing well this season.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Okay,
same with the Knicks.
I'm excited for Cleveland. I'm just worried about my jokes.
Anyway,
I'm worried about
that's going to do it for this edition of First Take. Thanks to the trifecta and the superfecta here. I'm Kerry Chow, Kate Fagan, Jane McManus, Sarah Spain. We're out. Ciao.